In this video, we'd like to provide a brief overview of the FairTax plan and the positive impact it would have on our nation when the income tax is eliminated. To begin with, what is the FairTax? In our review of the FairTax plan, we want to find out how it works, what impact does it have on you and your family, how does it impact your nation as a whole and by extension you, and we also take a look at the bottom line. To begin with, how does it work? All new goods and services are taxed once at 23 cents out of every dollar spent, but embedded taxes at each level of the supply chain are eliminated. That means that once a product is being developed, taxes are collected from every developer, every person within that supply chain, and that cost is added to the product that you purchase at the store on the retail level. There are no taxes collected on investments. Education and tuition is an investment. At this time, we're paying taxes under the income tax on capital gains and dividends, which would go away when the FairTax is eliminated. There are no taxes collected on used items. The FairTax is designed to collect taxes on new products only one time. The rebate function effectively untaxes your basic needs and services. Money is given to the head of household at the beginning of each month to cover the taxes up to poverty level spending. Next, we'd like to take a look at how it impacts you and your family. Number one, you take home your entire paycheck. There's no withholding for income tax, Social Security, or Medicare. Number two, you never file a tax return again. As tax season rolls around, you're no longer anxious about having the proper records or the proper forms or the ability to complete your tax returns legally. The FairTax eliminates the need for personal tax records. Think of all the receipts that we collect during the year and collect in a shoebox, not knowing if they'd be needed to file a proper tax return. Also, the mounds of statements that we receive from financial institutions that may be required to properly fill out our tax return for the next year. Estate planning is no longer necessary. A few years ago, I had a new will drawn up, and the attorney told me because of the income tax it was 16 pages long. If we had been under the FairTax, it would have only been 1 page long based on my family needs. It significantly increases demand for U.S.-produced goods, which means millions of new jobs created. The FairTax would reverse the current trend of corporations and manufacturing leaving our country because of being penalized under our current tax code. Under the FairTax, corporations and companies would flock back to this country in order to take advantage of a freer tax code. And more importantly, the income tax and the IRS are eliminated. There's no longer a need for the income tax or the IRS because taxes will be collected through the sales tax system of each state. Next, we'd like to take a look at how it impacts the nation and by extension how it impacts you and your family. Number one, it greatly improves the economy and increases the GDP. Conservative estimates believe that we will have an immediate GDP increase anywhere from 3 to 10% for the first few years after the FairTax goes into effect. It replaces payroll-based funding of Social Security and Medicare. It puts Social Security and Medicare on a more stable financial footing than we currently experience. The illegal underground economy is added to the tax base. Some estimates are that we are not collecting up to 25% of the taxes owed to this country because of the underground economy. U.S. offshore assets would be repatriated. There's estimates of between 11 and 15 trillion dollars overseas that companies cannot bring back to this country because of the income tax code. That money would flow back into this country and increase the ability for us to put our economy back on a positive track. And finally, the bottom line, it addresses this country's most pressing tax-related economic problems more effectively than any alternative. The spiral of higher tax compliance costs and the complexity. They're estimated that we spend between $2 and $7 billion a year just to comply with the tax code. With the FairTax, that money goes back into the economy. The trade deficit and lack of competitiveness of U.S.-produced goods. Right now, companies producing products overseas and selling in this country do not have the tax component built into each product that U.S. manufacturers have to endure because of the income tax code. Another problem is the looming insolvency of Social Security and Medicare. We've already touched on this, but the FairTax gives much more stable financial footing for Social Security and Medicare. The federal budget deficit. As the economy increases, the revenue to the federal government would increase dramatically, helping to reduce the deficit and move us toward a balanced budget. The alternative minimum tax. That is a political issue that surfaces from time to time and would be completely eliminated under the FairTax. And finally, one of the problems we have in this country is our chronically low savings rate. The FairTax taxes consumption, therefore provides incentive for people to save more. This video is designed to give you a brief overview of the FairTax and provide some of the benefits that it will provide for you and your family. For more information, go to gafairtax.org and check for frequently asked questions. Also, be sure to check out our videos that will explain many of these concepts in more detail, as well as other questions that you may have.